a tall, spooky-looking gate. She has come searching for her father, who has gone missing. Through the heavy set of double doors, up the grand staircase, and past the empty hallway. The place was huge, but hollow. She wandered aimlessly until she reached a small stairwell that led to an underground, to what seemed like a dungeon. At the corner was a hunched figure, her father. But before she could do anything else, sharp claws grabbed her by the shoulder and a roar erupted. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Val looked at him and demanded, "Who are you? I have come from my father." The beast roared back angrily. "He has trespassed and now he is my prisoner." Val gave herself up to take her father's place in return. Her father was thrown out of the castle, and she was left and locked in a cold, empty dungeon. The next morning, the door of the dungeon was slammed open, and in walked the beast, gave Val a hard look, and said, "You either dine with me or you starve." Now, Val's long brown hair and soft brown eyes would never give the impression of a lady who would fight back. But she got up, walked to the beast, glared at him, and said, "Your rudeness will get you nothing, certainly not a meal with me." This enraged the beast. He left the dungeon, slamming the door behind him. The beast sat alone at his dining table with his head in his hands, and he thought about what Val said. Then he gathered as much food as he could, returned to the dungeon, and left the door there. "Eat," he said. But this time, he left the door open. The next few days, he did the same thing, as he spoke his words kinder and kinder. "Eat. Eat, please." As he sat alone in his dark, lonely castle one night, he caught a glimpse of Belle, browsing through books on the bookshelf. He watched her, and by just the look on her face, he knew what would make her happy, and maybe see him in a different light. He knew Belle was not afraid of him, but he also knew she was not fond of him either. It has been years since he last felt happiness and love that he has forgotten how it was. Anger took over him. But right now, looking at her, all he wanted was for her to see him for how he used to be, not what he has become. So, after much convincing, he finally managed to get Belle to reluctantly agree to follow him. They walked into a room filled with walls covered in bookshelves, stacked with books from top to bottom. Belle looked around, eyes wide in shock, which quickly turned into awe. "All this is yours," he announced. When Belle looked at him this time, he saw something different. He saw actual happiness. And she said, "Thank you very much." Every day he would find her there, browsing and reading happily. She looked genuinely happy that it lightened up his heart. He would sit there for hours just keeping her company. As the days passed, she would read to her. She would read him all the books she could find. She read to him all the fairy tales with happy ever afters. And for the first time in a long time, the beast was happy. Days, weeks, months passed. They sat down for meals together, and for once, he learned how to pass the bowls and eat a little bit more politely each day. They took walks outside together, and for once, he learned how to not scare the birds away. With Belle, he learned how to live. With Belle, he learned how to love again. And the days Meanwhile, back home, Belle's father made all the villagers aware that a beast has taken his dear daughter. A beast with claws, horns, and sharp teeth that could rip anyone apart. Her father cried. It took preparation. Knives, spears, bows, and arrows were made before the villagers marched up to the castle to rescue Belle, whom they thought was captured by a dangerous beast. One night, outside the castle, stood an army of people bearing weapons and torches as they shouted, "Let her go!" The moment the beast showed himself, spears were thrown and arrows were launched. He tried to dodge these attacks, but a spear pierced through his back. He fell to the ground. Running out with a face full of fear, Belle dropped down beside him, pulled him into her arms. As she yelled at the top of her lungs, "Stop! Stop! He is not a beast! He is not a beast." Her voice, filled with desperation and sadness, echoed through the night, and the commotion stopped. Tears flowed down her face as she looked into his eyes before it shut completely. She cried and sobbed. She whispered to him, "But I have learned to love you. I have learned to really love you." The night fell quiet for a split second before a crack of thunder was heard and rain poured heavily. In her arms, she watched as something magical. The claws he had turned into hands. His horns disappeared, and his face, once a beast, turned into human. She watched everything, not quite believing her eyes, until standing before her was a man, a prince. He looked at her with a smile so wide as he said, "Belle, it's me." A spell was casted on the prince, a spell that only true love could break, and Belle has broken the spell. She made him happy again, and she taught him how to love. She saw past his physical differences, his temper, and all his other flaws, and loved him unconditionally. Then, they lived happily ever after. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Beauty and the Beast.